The afternoon everything shifted began like dozens of other tired days at the clinic. I finished charting my last patient, signed out at the nursing station and rolled my shoulders to ease the ache that lived there. My body already imagined the drive home through Atlanta traffic, the quiet of my little silver Honda Civic, the soft music that helped me breathe out the weight of other people's pain. I walked across the car park with my work bag on my shoulder, patting the side pocket where my keys always lived. My fingers met lip balm, a pen, some receipts, but no familiar chill of metal. I stopped beside an empty trolley bay, set the bag on the ground and searched properly. Still nothing. At first I blamed myself. Maybe I left them on my desk. Maybe they slipped out in the staff room. I retraced my steps back into the building, checked my locker twice, asked the receptionist, even peered under the plastic chairs in the waiting area. That little seed of irritation began to grow into something darker. I pulled out my phone and called my husband. "Darius, did you see my car keys this morning?" I asked. There was a pause long enough to make every muscle in my body tense. "Yeah, I seen them," he said. "Mum needed to run errands, so I took the car to her place." My mind stalled. "You took my car to your mother's house? Without telling me?" He sounded almost bored. "Keisha, relax. You know her Buick been acting up. She needed something reliable. You can catch the bus. It is not that serious." That sentence slid into me like a cold knife. My name is Keisha Monroe, and I am not quick to cry in public. Years of nursing have taught me how to stand steady when everyone else shakes. Standing under the fluorescent car park light with my bag on the ground, I felt something fragile inside me begin to splinter. "It is my car, Darius," I said quietly. "You did not ask me." "We are married," he replied. "What is yours is mine, what is mine is yours. Mum needed it. You making this into drama." A colleague waved as she walked past, and I forced a smile that felt like a mask. When the call ended, I ordered a ride-share and waited near the entrance. The space where my car usually sat seemed to stare back at me, an accusation in concrete. That missing set of keys was not just an inconvenience. It was the moment the curtain finally lifted on something that had been unfolding slowly for years, a pattern of me giving and others taking, a pattern of decisions made over my head in the name of family. On the ride home, I stared out at the familiar streets and tried to swallow the lump in my throat. The driver chatted about the weather and football matches. I nodded, answered politely, and kept seeing that empty parking space. Our townhouse looked smaller when we pulled up. No silver Honda in the driveway, only a stretch of bare concrete. I stood there a moment after stepping out, keys to someone else's car still in my hand, and felt like a visitor in my own life. Before that day, the story of who I was had been shaped by responsibility. I am 32 years old, a registered nurse at a community clinic in Atlanta. I grew up in a working-class black family, the eldest child of Franklin and Denise Monroe. My mother died when I was 23, after a sudden stroke. My father, Franklin, a retired electrician with careful eyes and a patient voice, raised my younger brother and me through a mixture of discipline, humor and quiet sacrifice. My brother, Jamal, lives across town, a barber who turns his chair into a kind of confessional. He jokes when he is worried and calls every Sunday to check on Dad and me. My closest friend, Tasha Williams, teaches primary school. She loves loud earrings, children's laughter, and the truth spoken without sugar. She has never fully trusted my husband's charm, although she tried to support my choice. My husband, Darius Johnson, works in IT support at a logistics company. He is handsome in that easy way that photographs well, with smooth skin and a quick smile. People like him almost immediately. He is clever with computers and less skillful with accountability. His mother, Loretta Johnson, is a woman who walks into every room like it owes her attention. She wears strong floral perfume, keeps her nails immaculately done and believes any resource attached to her son's life might as well belong to her. That evening, surrounded by the familiar walls of my own house, I felt something new awaken. It was not rage exactly. It was recognition. I finally saw that the peace in my home rested on my silence, and that silence had just become too expensive to maintain. I grew up watching my father work until his hands cracked. After my mother died, he fixed other people's wiring during the day and fixed our broken hearts at night. He showed up with gently cooked meals, terrible jokes and a presence that said, without words, that our world had not ended completely. As the eldest, I stepped into my mother's chores without being asked. I ironed school uniforms, learned to stretch groceries across the week and sat with Jamal during homework. Love, in our house, looked like service. Nobody ever announced that lesson. Life simply wrote it on my bones. When I met Darius at a friend's cookout, that instinct to care latched onto him almost instantly. He stood near the grill, laughing with his friends, his eyes bright. He told me later that he noticed me laughing with Tasha, gesturing with my hands, and thought I looked solid. "You look like you know how to hold things together," he said on our second date. I like that. In those early months, his admiration felt flattering. He came from a childhood filled with instability. His father drifted in and out, and Loretta carried the weight of everything. He spoke of eviction notices, overdue bills and arguments that lasted long into the night. My calm presence soothed him. He said my voice felt like somewhere he could rest. I helped him polish his CV, practiced interview questions with him and drove him to appointments. When he got the job in IT support, he hugged me outside the building and whispered, "I could not have done this without you." Marriage, at first, seemed to be a natural extension of that partnership. We moved from his mother's crowded flat to a modest townhouse on the south side. My father helped us with part of the deposit, insisting that stability mattered more than his savings gathering dust. That act of generosity tied him quietly into the fabric of our marriage in a way none of us fully understood yet. The Honda Civic came into my life 2 years later. I saved from every paycheck, cutting back on takeaways and new clothes. My father added what he could. Sitting at the dealership, pen in hand, I felt a bone-deep pride. The car was not fancy, yet it was mine in a way nothing material had ever been mine. My name filled the boxes on the loan agreement. The insurance policy listed me as the primary driver. Darius congratulated me, kissed my forehead and posted a picture online, captioned, "My baby out here making boss moves." At that time, his pride felt genuine. He used the car sometimes, and I did not mind. Husbands and wives share. He drove me to work some mornings, picked me up others, and took the car to the barbershop on Saturdays. Little patterns crept in slowly, almost invisibly. He rang me during lunch to ask if I could pay a bill that slipped his mind. He asked me to send some money to a friend on his behalf, promising to repay it soon. He forgot to fill the tank and laughed about it. Each moment alone felt manageable. Together they formed a script. Keisha would fix things. Keisha would understand. Loretta praised my supportive nature at Sunday dinners. "You got you a good woman, son," she would say. "Keisha knows how to be there for her man." She never said I might deserve someone being there for me in return. That missing set of keys, weeks later, did not appear out of nowhere. It dropped into a long story of me absorbing other people's emergencies, of me stretching my own limits to keep the peace. I tolerated little slights because I told myself love demanded patience. Love does ask for patience. Love does ask for compromise. Real love does not quietly train one person to disappear so that everyone else can feel comfortable. That difference had been hidden for years under compliments about my strength. The day my car disappeared without my consent, the difference finally stepped into the light. I stood at my kitchen sink that night, scrubbing dishes harder than necessary, and caught my reflection in the window. The woman staring back at me looked older than her 32 years, eyes tired, shoulders sagging. I realized I had become excellent at holding everyone else's life together and clumsy at defending my own boundaries. That awareness hurt. It also marked the beginning of something new. The story of this car, this marriage, and my father's response is not only a tale about an insolent husband and an entitled mother-in-law. It is a record of how a woman learned to stop confusing endurance with love, and how the people who truly loved her helped her remember that her dignity was not a favor anyone granted. It was hers all along. Long before my car ended up in Loretta's driveway, small warnings knocked gently on the door of my attention. I ignored many of them. Retrospective clarity can feel cruel. The mind replays scenes and whispers, "You knew." You simply did not want to know that you knew. One early warning appeared a few months after our wedding, when we still lived with Loretta to save money. It was a Saturday morning, my first day off after 3 long shifts. I planned to sleep until my body decided to wake naturally. At 7, our bedroom door swung open. Loretta stepped in without waiting. "Darius, fix my phone," she said. "The screen acting crazy. I am going to the salon." I blinked awake, the sheet wrapped around me. Darius sat up, rubbing his eyes. "Mom, later," he groaned. We were sleeping. "I have an appointment at 9, she replied. "I need it now. My stylist texts me." He rolled out of bed, pulled on sweatpants and followed her out. I lay there, heart pounding with a mix of embarrassment and anger. The door remained half open. Privacy felt optional in her world. When I mentioned it later, Darius shrugged. "She is used to having me around," he said. "She raised me on her own. She does not think about boundaries like that." Another warning came the first time she reorganized my kitchen without asking. I came home from work and found the spice rack rearranged, pans in different cupboards, my favorite mug pushed to the back. "I fixed your cabinets," she announced. "You had things all over the place. This makes more sense." She smiled as if expecting praise. I thanked her through clenched teeth and moved a few things back after she left. Darius defended her again. "She likes order," he said. "It is how she shows love." Some actions might truly be love expressed awkwardly. Others are about control. I did not yet know how to tell the difference. The dynamic between Darius and money offered further clues. When he first asked to borrow a little to cover a bill, I said yes without hesitation. He paid it back the next week. Time blurred the lines. Transfers became more frequent, repayments less consistent. "Baby, send me 60, I will sort you out Friday," he texted. Friday arrived, then passed. The amount vanished into the swirl of our shared life. When I raised questions, he grew defensive. "You always counting every little thing," he complained. "I take care of plenty you do not even see." True partnership invites transparency, not guilt. I kept quiet to avoid escalating arguments and told myself that marriage required flexibility. There was also the envelope of cash Loretta waved around in our lounge one evening. She had received back pay from her old job, several months of underpaid wages corrected at once. "Look at God," she said, thinning the notes between her fingers. In the kitchen, I asked Darius whether anyone had helped her navigate the paperwork. "I sorted it," he replied. "Filled the forms, tracked the calls." She could not have done it without me. Part of me felt proud of his competence. Another part wondered why he had not asked my father, who understood such matters deeply and would have ensured future security rather than immediate spending. Darius bristled when I mentioned Dad's name. "I am not some child needing your father to supervise everything," he said. These small incidents formed a pattern of loyalty tilted heavily in one direction. Darius leaned first toward his mother's needs, then rationalized his decisions when they brushed against my boundaries. I excused his behavior through the lens of his upbringing. He had watched Loretta struggle. He felt he owed her everything. Compassion is important. Compassion without boundaries becomes self-erasure. Each time I swallowed discomfort, I reinforced a script inside both of us: he could stretch my tolerance, and I would bend rather than risk conflict. When Loretta sent that text after the car incident, my stomach turned. "Thank you for the car, Keisha. It drives so smooth. God bless you." No mention of borrowing. No sense of temporary arrangement. Gratitude for a gift I had never offered. Reading that message, my mind finally assembled the puzzle pieces. The problem was not a sudden single act. The problem was an entire pattern of taking that had now climbed into something concrete, expensive, and legally tied to my name. That realization prepared the ground for the person who would soon step forward with clarity that no one expected, my father. Stories about betrayal often flatten people into one dimension. Villains, victims, heroes. My reality felt far more complicated. Darius had not always been careless with my feelings. He had also held me in moments that shaped my understanding of love. Those memories echoed loudly when his behavior wounded me. When my mother's stroke tore through our lives, Darius and I had been dating less than a year. The call came while I was at work. Tasha drove me to the hospital. My father stood in the corridor looking suddenly smaller, Jamal near him with his back pressed to the wall, eyes shining. Visiting hours had ended. Nurses moved around us with clipped efficiency. Machines beeped behind closed doors. I sat on a plastic chair, numb. Darius arrived less than an hour later, still wearing his work clothes. No one had asked him. He simply came. He sat beside me, took my hand and stayed there until the early hours. He did not flood the silence with empty phrases. When tears finally broke free, he held my head against his chest until my breath steadied. That night, his presence felt like proof that I would not drown. During the funeral arrangements, he drove my father and me to the funeral home, listened while we chose a coffin, carried heavy boxes, fetched food, stood near Jamal as he tried to be strong and failed. My father noticed. "He looked out for you," Dad said softly a week after the burial. "I am grateful." On my 28th birthday, Darius attempted to bake a cake from scratch. The kitchen looked like a small disaster area when I walked in, flour on the counter and a smear of icing on his cheek. The cake itself leaned to one side, the letters in "Happy Birthday Keisha," uneven and clumsy. He grinned as if he had mastered a 5-course gourmet menu. "I wanted to do something myself," he said. "You always doing everything." I took pictures, laughed until my stomach hurt and posted the crooked cake online. It felt good to be cherished so openly. Memories like those formed the foundation of my loyalty. They convinced me that the version of him who cut corners on my respect was temporary, an unfortunate phase, not the truth. I believed the man who sat beside me in the hospital corridor still lived inside the husband who took my car without asking. That belief made it harder to confront him. When the car incident happened, those memories rose up whenever I considered drawing a harder line. I remembered his kindness to my father after Mum's death, his jokes with Jamal, the way he once rubbed my back when I came home from a night shift shaking with residual adrenaline. Love is rarely simple. It is possible for a person to have golden moments and still behave in ways that corrode trust. My heart clung to the hospital corridor version of Darius. My lived reality increasingly faced the man who could listen to my concerns about our finances and respond with irritation. That tension drove me to my father's house a few days after the keys went missing. I needed someone who knew all my seasons, someone who would not let sentiment swallow sense. Dad opened the door before I could knock fully, like he had been waiting just behind it. "My girl," he said, pulling me into a hug that smelled of engine oil, coffee, and safety. At his kitchen table, with chipped edges and years of family decisions soaked into the grain, I told him the story from beginning to end. I did not have to polish it or make anyone look better than they were. He listened, hands wrapped around his mug, gaze fixed on my face. When I finished, his shoulders rose and fell on a long breath. "You have always looked after people," he said quietly. "You learned that from watching me with your mum and your brother. I need you to learn something new now. Looking after yourself is not betrayal. It is responsibility." That sentence cut through the fog of my conflicted feelings. My father, who had once thanked Darius for supporting me in my grief, now looked directly at the harm connected to his behavior. He did not erase Darius's earlier kindness, yet he refused to let that history excuse present disrespect. That balance of truth and compassion set the tone for what came next. He would not storm into my marriage reckless and loud. He would approach the problem with the same precision he used when handling live wires. He would also, in his own quiet way, leave my husband and his mother without words when they finally understood what their choices had placed at risk. In the 2 weeks after my car migrated to Loretta's driveway, tension settled into our townhouse like a permanent third occupant. Conversations bent around the subject at first, then crashed into it repeatedly. Darius came home later in the evenings, claiming overtime or traffic. Sometimes I believed him. Sometimes I pictured my car in places I had not chosen, carrying errands I had never agreed to support. Loretta phoned often, her voice bright as she narrated her new routines. "I took the car to Bible study," she announced one evening on speaker. "Everyone said I looked good in it." My chest tightened at that pronouncement. "I am glad it is helping," I said, the words tasting like betrayal of myself. After the call, I turned to Darius. "When is my car coming back?" He frowned. "You still on that?" "I am still the one paying the loan," I replied. "I am still the one whose name sits on the insurance. The question is fair." He threw himself onto the sofa. "You can use the bus, ride share, whatever. You got options. Mum does not. She needs it more. Need is real. Need does not cancel ownership or erase consent." I understood Loretta's struggles. I also understood that I had never been invited into the decision about how my sacrifice would be used. I confided in Tasha during our lunch break at the clinic. She listened with her arms folded, her expression shifting from disbelief to anger. "Keisha, that man has lost perspective," she said. "You worked for that car. Your dad helped. They helped themselves to it like it grew in the driveway. That is not love. That is exploitation wrapped in family language." Her bluntness stung because it was accurate. When I finally told Darius that my father knew about the situation, the atmosphere changed. We stood in the kitchen, me drying plates, him scrolling his phone. "I talked to Daddy," I said. He looked up sharply. "About what?" "The car," I said. "He helped pay for it. His money and his name are tied to it." He needed to know. Expression slipping into irritation, Darius shook his head. "You always running to Franklin. You make me look like I cannot handle my business." "You did not handle your business," I reminded him. "You handled mine without asking." Nights grew colder, even when the weather stayed warm. We turned away from each other in bed more often. Little requests turned into skirmishes. If I asked whether he had transferred his share of the electricity bill, he heard an accusation. Within that growing storm, my father remained calm. He asked me to send copies of the purchase agreement, the insurance policy and the loan schedule. I took pictures and forwarded them. He responded with a simple message, "I see. Come to the house Saturday." Loretta continued to speak about the car as though it had always belonged to her. "I might add some seat covers," she said on one call. "Make it feel more like mine." The words, "more like mine," lodged in my throat. I realized, with a kind of tired clarity, that she did not even perceive what she had done as overstepping. In her mind, access to her son meant automatic access to everything orbiting him, including my labor. Pressure often builds quietly before anything cracks. Darius had grown used to the version of me that swallowed hurt to keep the peace. That version still lived inside me, yet she now had company, a new self who had spent evenings at her father's kitchen table learning words such as liability, legal ownership, and insurance breach. The next phase of the story would not center shouting matches or slammed doors. It would center facts placed gently but firmly on the table, in front of everyone, in a room my father knew how to command without raising his voice. That knowledge gave me a kind of cautious hope. I was no longer alone with my pain. I had an ally who understood both my heart and the paperwork. On Saturday morning, I arrived at my father's house with a notebook in my bag and worry pressing against my ribs. Sunlight fell across the familiar brickwork. The porch light fixture that Dad had repaired himself years earlier still shone bright, though it was not needed. He opened the door before I could knock properly. "Come in, baby," he said, stepping aside. "We have some things to go through." The kitchen table looked almost ceremonial. A neat stack of papers sat beside his mug. He had underlined certain lines, tiny sticky notes marking particular pages. "Sit," he said. I sat. My hands trembled slightly, so I laced them together on my lap. "I asked you for those copies because I needed to see exactly where you stand," he began. "Let us walk through it together so you understand as well." He asked a series of questions, each one simple and precise. "Whose name is on the car title?" "Mine," I answered. "Whose is on the loan as guarantor?" "Yours and mine," I said. "Who is recorded on the insurance policy?" "Me as primary, Darius as occasional," I replied. "Is Loretta listed anywhere?" "No," I said. He nodded slowly, as if placing each fact in an invisible diagram. "I spoke to a friend of mine, an old colleague who does consultancy for an insurance company," he continued. He explained what happens if someone who is not listed as a regular driver acts as if the car is theirs. If they have an accident, particularly while using the car frequently, the company can refuse to pay. They can then come after the people named on the loan. He looked straight at me as he said, "That means you." "That means me." The room seemed to tilt slightly. I had known the situation felt wrong. Hearing the legal consequences laid out made the wrongness solid and undeniable. "So Loretta's driving could damage your credit and your savings," I said. "Not just mine." "Exactly," he replied. "This stopped being a private marital argument the moment my name and money were placed at risk without my consent." He pushed a piece of paper toward me. It contained notes from his conversation with the consultant, written in his tidy hand. Underlined phrases jumped out: material misrepresentation, policy breach, personal liability. "I am not telling you this to scare you," he said. "I am telling you because an adult who signs documents needs to understand what those signatures mean. You are not a passenger here. You are the driver, whether your husband respects that or not." The metaphor landed sharply. "What do we do?" I asked. He smiled faintly. "First thing, you already did," he said. "You told the truth to someone who could help. Next, we protect you with information and with a plan. We called the insurance company that afternoon. I informed them that the car was being used regularly by someone not listed on the policy. The agent sounded concerned and adjusted the notes on my account. If any claim ever arose, there would now be a record that I had raised the issue. We will also send a follow-up email summarizing this call," the agent said. After we hung up, Dad printed the email confirmation and added it to the stack. "Paper trail," he said. "Very important." He then proposed something I had not expected. He wanted a meeting with Darius. "I am inviting him here," he said. "You will be present. Loretta can come if she chooses. I am not going to shout at anyone. I am going to lay the facts out. They can challenge my opinion. They cannot argue with the paperwork." Part of me recoiled at the idea of my husband being addressed like a careless teenager. Another part felt immense relief. I had tried to explain my hurt. He had dismissed it as nagging. He would have more difficulty dismissing my father's documents and calm questions. On the bus ride home, I watched houses roll past and felt a new steadiness form inside me. The fear did not disappear. It simply gained company. Determination sat beside it now, quiet and watchful. I realized that I had spent years waiting for someone to choose my well-being above their comfort. My father had just done that without hesitation. His involvement marked a turning point. The situation would no longer live in shadows. Soon, it would stand under direct light, in his living room, where false narratives would struggle to survive. Once my father decided on a course of action, he moved carefully, not slowly. His years as an electrician had trained him to respect hidden currents. That same mindset guided his response to my situation. We started by visiting the dealership together. The man at the desk seemed slightly surprised to see a father-daughter pair arrive on a weekday afternoon. Dad let me do most of the talking. I requested a full payment history and outstanding balance for my car loan. The clerk printed the documents and placed them in a branded folder. Back at the kitchen table, Dad spread the pages out. "These numbers tell a story," he said. The story showed every monthly payment made on time, each one coming from my account. Occasionally, there was a larger sum that matched deposits my father had made as gifts. Nothing linked to Darius appeared. Facts do not care about social media posts. The folder explained in black and white what my husband liked to present as our effort. Next, Dad suggested we draft a message addressed jointly to Darius and Loretta. We did not send it immediately. The act of writing it helped organize my thoughts. The message was firm without insult. It stated that I had consulted both the dealership and the insurance company and that I now understood the legal responsibility tied to the car. It clarified that I could not allow an unlisted driver to use the vehicle as a primary car. It requested that the car be returned to my possession by a specific date. It explained that future arrangements involving my assets would require my explicit consent. Seeing the words on paper strengthened my confidence. I had spent years expressing my feelings in soft, apologetic phrases. This document spoke in clear sentences. Dad then called Darius and invited him to a meeting the following weekend. I would like to speak with you about something important that affects all of us, he said. It concerns the car. I listened to Darius's muffled reply from my side of the room. He tried to keep his tone casual. Sure, Mr. Monroe, he said. We can come through. When he hung up, he turned to me. You really got your dad involved heavy in this. He was already involved the moment his money went into that car, I replied. He scoffed and walked away, yet I noticed a flicker of unease cross his face. This was not a domestic squabble he could dismiss with jokes. This was a financial reality scrutinized by a man who understood numbers and responsibility. In the days leading up to the meeting, I continued to shift my own behavior. I stopped cushioning Darius from the consequences of his choices. If he forgot a bill, I did not quietly pay it. When he asked to borrow money, I requested specifics. He accused me of changing. I am not the one who changed, I said. I am the one who finally started paying attention. The night before the meeting, I barely slept. Thoughts tumbled through my head. What if Darius felt humiliated and retaliated? What if Loretta caused a scene? What if my father grew angrier than he intended and the whole thing collapsed into chaos? Morning arrived regardless of my worries. Dad called to confirm the time. His voice sounded steady, almost gentle. Remember, Keisha, he said, we are not acting from vengeance. We are acting from protection. You do not need to shout. You simply need to stand in the truth of what is yours. The plan was not flashy. It did not involve secret tricks or public shaming. It relied on something far more powerful, a woman finally claiming her right to decide how her own labor, money and credit would be used, supported by a father who understood that true love includes teaching your child how to defend their dignity. The day of the meeting, my father's living room felt both familiar and charged. The same framed family photos lined the walls. The same worn sofa anchored the space. The difference lay in the neat stack of documents on the coffee table and the knowledge that several people would leave this room unable to pretend ignorance. Darius arrived with Loretta beside him. She wore a bright blouse and an expression that mixed suspicion with entitlement. I greeted them politely. Darius avoided my eyes. Dad invited everyone to sit. He remained standing a moment longer, then took his armchair, positioned slightly apart. The television remained off. The atmosphere resembled a family intervention, although no one used that word. Thank you for coming, he began. I asked for this meeting because a situation has developed around Keisha's car that affects all of us, including me. I prefer to address such matters face to face. Loretta waved a hand lightly. It is just family borrowing, she said. I needed transport, Darius helped. We do not need a whole conference. Dad regarded her calmly. Family decisions still live in the real world, he said. The bank and the insurance company do not accept "we are family" as a legal answer. That is why we are here. He picked up the first sheet of paper. Let us start with simple facts. Keisha, whose name is on the title of the Honda? Mine, I said. He turned to Darius. Is that correct? Darius shifted in his seat. Yes, sir. Whose names are on the loan? Dad asked. Keisha's and yours, Darius replied. Whose name appears as primary on the insurance policy? Keisha's, he muttered. And who has been making the monthly payments? Keisha, he said, almost inaudibly. Dad placed the sheet down. Good. We all agree on the facts. Now, Mrs. Johnson, are you listed anywhere on the title, the loan, or the insurance policy? Loretta frowned. No, but my son is her husband, she said. What belongs to her belongs to him. He had every right to let me use the car. I am his mother. Dad's gaze remained gentle but firm. Use is one thing. Regular, primary use by an unlisted driver is something else entirely. I consulted an insurance specialist. If you had an accident while using that car as your own, the company could refuse to pay. They would then come after the people whose names are on the loan. That would be Keisha and me. He allowed a short silence. Do you understand what that means? Loretta shifted. I am a careful driver, she said. I have not had an accident in years. Care does not cancel risk, he replied. Accidents are called accidents for a reason. He spread several pages across the table, the payment history, the loan agreement, printouts from the insurance correspondence. I am not here to embarrass anyone, he continued. I am here to protect what my daughter has built and what I have supported. A decision was made that placed our finances and our credit in danger without our knowledge. That must be corrected. Turning to Darius, he spoke more directly. Son, generosity is admirable. Helping your mother is admirable. Giving away practical control of something you did not pay for, that is tied legally to someone else's name, is not admirable. It is reckless. Darius's jaw tightened. I was just trying to take care of my mum, he said. You make it sound like I sold the car. You casually transferred its daily use without permission, Dad said. You knew the car did not belong to you on paper. You also knew your wife relied on it to get to work. You did not ask her. You informed her after. That is the problem. Loretta opened her mouth to speak, then closed it again when Dad raised his hand slightly. This is what needs to happen, he said. Today, not next week, the car returns to Keisha's full possession. Keys, documents, everything. Going forward, if you wish to help your mother with transport, you will do so using resources that carry your own name and risk. If you ever again involve assets that I have helped fund, you will consult me before putting them at hazard. That is respect. That is adulthood. The room felt very still. No one shouted. No one stormed out. The weight came not from volume but from unarguable facts. Darius stared at the papers, then at the floor. Loretta's shoulders, which had been square and proud, softened slightly. She looked older in that moment, more human, less like the unstoppable force I experienced in my kitchen. To her credit, she spoke more quietly. I did not think about all that, she admitted. I just thought, my son is helping me at last. I liked the feeling. I understand the desire to feel supported, Dad said. I truly do. It should not come at the price of someone else's security without their consent. Nobody had a clever reply. Truth had entered the room in the form of documents and consistent logic. It left no space for slogans about family that contradicted reality. That same evening, my car rolled back into our driveway. I watched from the lounge window as Darius pulled in, the familiar metallic glint catching the streetlight. Loretta sat in the passenger seat, staring straight ahead. I stepped outside, heart thudding. The air smelled of petrol and cut grass. Darius got out, keys in hand. He did not come any closer than necessary. Here, he said, placing the keys in my palm without meeting my eyes. Thank you, I replied. I walked around the car slowly. A new church bumper sticker sat slightly crooked on the back. A small scratch near the rear tire caught my eye, not deep but visible. Details like that filled me with a strange, quiet grief. It felt as though someone had borrowed not only an object, but also the story I had with it, then returned it changed without apology. Loretta did not get out of the car. One of her church friends arrived moments later to pick her up. She climbed into the other vehicle, face tight. Our eyes met briefly through the glass. No greeting passed between us. The distance now felt almost physical. Inside the house, the air grew thicker. Darius paced the lounge before speaking. "You got what you wanted," he said. "Your dad made his point. You can stop acting like I stole something from you." I leaned against the wall, the keys still resting in my hand. "You did take something without asking," I said. "That is exactly what happened. I was trying to look after my mother," he insisted. "You made me feel like a criminal in front of your father." "My father did not create this situation," I replied. "You did." He only refused to pretend it was harmless. His face hardened. "You always take his side." "There should not be sides," I said. "There should be respect. You did not show me any when you made that decision." Arguments like this became frequent over the following weeks. He accused me of undermining him. I told him that leadership inside a marriage did not mean unilateral decisions that placed the other partner at risk. He claimed I had changed. I admitted that I had, and that the old version of me had tolerated too much. We attended one counseling session with a local pastor who offered lay therapy. Sitting on opposite sides of a worn sofa, we laid out our grievances. "I am used to taking care of my mom," Darius said. "It has been me and her my whole life. When she needs something, I move. That is how it is." The counselor nodded. "And where does your wife's security fit into that picture?" He hesitated. "She should understand," he said eventually. "We family. We share." I spoke then, voice steady. "I do not mind sharing," I said. "I mind being volunteered without discussion. I mind my labor funding gifts I did not agree to give. I mind that your loyalty to your mother seems to require my silence." The counselor observed that our marriage suffered from blurred boundaries and competing loyalties. Darius rolled his eyes slightly at the mention of boundaries. "Everybody talking about boundaries nowadays," he said. "Feels like an excuse to be selfish. Self-protection in the face of exploitation is not selfishness." I knew that now. Life began to rearrange itself quietly. I took on an additional certification at work, increasing my hours at the clinic and positioning myself for a promotion. Having my car back made the logistics possible. I visited my father more often, sat with Jamal in his barbershop during slow periods and let Tasha drag me to small gatherings where nobody knew me as Darius's wife. I also changed my habits at home. I kept careful records of shared expenses. I declined requests that strained my budget. I did not allow guilt to dictate my yes. The marriage did not collapse overnight. Love, history, and habit tethered us together for a while longer. Yet something fundamental had shifted. Trust, once cracked, no longer absorbed weight the same way. Every new slight felt heavier in the light of what had already occurred. Darius and Loretta faced consequences, although not dramatic ones. She had to reconsider her transport options, perhaps repair her own car or adjust her routines. He had to accept that his decisions now met firm challenges instead of automatic compliance. They never apologized in the way storybooks might describe. Reality offered something subtler, an enforced recognition that their choices had limits. In that quiet enforcement, my life began to honor my own worth a little more each day. Months have passed since the evening my father laid out documents on his coffee table and made my husband and his mother listen. The car still sits outside my house, slightly scratched, bumper sticker removed, insurance payments up to date. The story wrapped around it has changed more than the vehicle itself. People sometimes ask why I did not scream the house down, or why I did not pack Darius's clothes in bin bags and throw them on Loretta's lawn. Anger occasionally rose, sharp and hot, yet another voice always spoke louder in my mind. That voice belonged to my father. Act like an owner, he had said. Not a reactor. Owners move with intention. Owners understand their responsibilities and their rights. Owners pick up documents, call companies, ask questions, and refuse to sign away their security in the name of keeping others comfortable. Strength in my life rarely looks like a dramatic scene. It looks like sitting at a kitchen table with a notebook, calculating bills, understanding loan agreements, and noticing where patterns of disrespect hide. It looks like saying no in a calm tone and resisting the urge to over-explain. The marriage, eventually, reached a crossroads. The car incident exposed a deeper conflict in values. Darius believed that loyalty to his mother required me to yield whenever their interests touched mine. I believed that loyalty inside a marriage required equal consultation and shared risk. After repeated attempts at counseling and many late-night conversations, we agreed to separate. Signing those papers hurt. Memories of hospital corridors and crooked birthday cakes did not vanish. They simply joined a larger narrative where love existed alongside habits that harmed me. Separation did not feel like failure. It felt like releasing a structure that no longer supported who I was becoming. I moved through grief, anger, nostalgia, and relief, sometimes all in 1 week. Through it all, my father and my small circle of people stood nearby, not rescuing me, yet refusing to let me forget my own strength. Loretta no longer calls me. Stories about me occasionally travel back through extended acquaintances. Some say she tells people that I let the old man control my marriage. Others say she still speaks of the Honda as if destiny snatched it away unfairly. Those narratives belong to her. Mine is different. In my version, a tired nurse finally realized that being dependable for everyone else had cost her too much. A father, who once changed light fixtures and patched roofs, learned how to change the course of his daughter's life with carefully chosen words and strategic phone calls. A car became the stage where questions of respect, ownership, and entitlement were forced into the open. I think often about the girl I used to be, the one who considered endless sacrifice the proof of love. Compassion for her runs deep. She did not know another way. She copied what she saw and amplified it. No one had yet taught her that love can be mutual, that support does not have to cost self-respect. That girl has not disappeared completely. She simply now shares space with a woman who understands legal terms, reads contracts, keeps records, and trusts her own discomfort. When something feels wrong, the new version of me investigates rather than immediately smoothing it over. Strength in my story rarely roars. It speaks in quiet sentences such as, "No, that does not work for me," and "I need time to think about this." It appears in the way I lock my car at night, not with fear, but with a small, grounded sense of ownership. It shows itself when I sit across from financial advisors or managers and ask precise questions. Life has rearranged itself around this new understanding. My days hold more peace, not because difficult people have vanished, but because I no longer invite chaos disguised as duty into my most intimate spaces. When I look at my father now, I see more than the man who fixed our broken appliances and dried our childhood tears. I see the person who modeled that protection can be gentle and firm at the same time, that revenge does not always need raised voices. Sometimes it simply requires truth delivered so clearly that those who benefited from confusion fall silent. The story began with missing keys and a borrowed car. It ends, at least for now, with a woman who has learned that her heart deserves the same careful stewardship she once reserved only for others. My father's intervention returned more than a vehicle. It returned me to myself.